Welcome to Tradies Who Lead, the podcast about everyday leadership for everyday legends. I'm Ash Baltecki, a diesel mechanic by trade and your host. On the podcast, we share how every tradie can practice leadership in their role, regardless of their title or experience. In each episode, you'll hear from tradies across all industries about how they apply leadership skills and mindsets in the trades so that we can learn from them and level up our leadership on the side. In this episode, we cover the importance of communication and how to lead change within and beyond a business. Today, we're joined by Tom Macrokanis, a qualified boilermaker turned construction innovator who's using technology to tackle one of the industry's biggest challenges, housing affordability. Tom founded Macro 3D in 2018 to advance concrete 3D printing technology, cutting build times and costs in ways that could genuinely change how we deliver homes in this country. He's also the director of Macro Constructions Group, a vertically integrated business supplying steel, concrete, and light gauge steel framing solutions across residential, commercial, and industrial projects. What makes Tom's story worth listening to isn't just the tech, it's the trade. He started his first business at 17, backed himself when no one had a roadmap for what he was building, and led teams across disciplines he taught himself from scratch. Tom has had to bring people with him on a vision most couldn't see yet, building partnerships with universities and industry leaders, developing proprietary systems, and progressing multiple patents. None of that happens without the ability to influence, communicate, and earn trust at every level. Driven by a lifelong passion for building and invention, Tom sits at the intersection of construction and technology. His vision is fully automated, AI-driven construction where homes are designed, manufactured, and built faster, smarter, and more affordably than ever. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today, Tom.
Not a problem at all. Thanks for having me, Ash.
So when it comes to leadership, what is leadership to you?
There's lots of things that leadership is, but I think the main thing that leadership is it's about having the accountability for the team. I think one of the things that I've definitely had to personally go through over the last few years as we've been growing the business is just really in a way of extreme ownership, and really once you focus on that, you I feel can lead a lot better, because it's not necessarily about whose mistake it is that's typically the thing that causes you the most grief, like whether it's an issue on site or an issue with drawings or something like that. It normally comes back to something that you could have put in place, and you're not trying to lock it down to something that's like specific, like it's this person's fault and it's this person's problem. It's like, what is the system or something that has not been put in place that allows this to work efficiently? And so looking at your business as a machine that needs to be tuned to be efficient is, I think, the one of the keys for leadership, at least in what we sort of look at leadership as being.
That's a really powerful example, and I like how it relates so much to your, I guess, hands-on engineering background as well. Where did that journey begin for you? You obviously started your first business at 17. Did your leadership journey start then, or did it start before then, or maybe later?
I played a lot of sport as a kid, and so it was always in different sports teams and stuff, whether it was cricket or footy. And I often found myself in some sort of leadership position, and that I think has sort of carried through to what I do today with running multiple businesses and doing that sort of work. I think it definitely stemmed from an early age, being involved with sport. And my leadership style has always been, even from when I was younger, it's been less about talking and more about doing, and sort of leading by showing rather than just making some grand speech. It's not really something I'm typically it's not really my forte is being someone who's super well spoken or very articulate about what needs to happen. But I'm usually quite direct and straight to the point. But I'm happy to show the way that I want something done, and lead through action.
I imagine it's quite powerful to understand your natural style and then just be able to lean into that and obviously find ways to work with people, knowing that, well, this is how I'm going to show up, this is what I bring to the table, and obviously finding the way to make that work with other people, which as well, coming from sporting background, as so much as sport teaches us, it teaches us how to work well with other people, especially when, we're not all the
100%.
same and we all communicate differently, interpret things differently. And so when it came to that first business, what really inspired you to start your first business so early?
So if I take you back a little bit further back than that business, when I was in high school, like obviously I was very sporty, and it took an injury in year 12 to sort of kick me into I've got this other skill set that I haven't really tapped into yet. So I was very focused on sport, not spending a lot of time on my schooling necessarily. Schooling was secondary. Because of that injury, it then opened me up to some other alternative things that I was good at, and one of which was actually programming, computer programming. So I took the class in year 12 and did pretty well in it, built a product in that class that I then was trying to take out to the market and raise money for. And off the back of that, I met this particular business owner who I was looking to get to invest in me. And he sort of said, well, Tommy, you know very little about running a business, and you should probably consider learning how to run a business before you start actually doing it yourself. So why don't you come and work for me? I'm a business consultant. You can learn as much as you can over the next 12 months, and we can sort of go from there. And it was during that year where he'd sort of said to me, look, you're not going to probably be here at the end of the year, or you'll probably finish up because we don't have necessarily a proper place for you. You're just sort of an intern doing research reports and making coffee and all that sort of stuff, and just learning by being there. We probably need you to work out what you're going to do next. And he said, probably the best option for you is to run a business. And so it was during that year I sort of found some different stuff and finished up with maybe, wristwatches are nice. Let's start there. That was my first go at running a business. And look, you learn plenty, but you learn a lot by doing. And that was sort of one of the things I learned by doing was get stuck straight into, you build your e-commerce site and you work out where you're getting your supplies from, and you work on pricing and you work on marketing. And it was a good introduction into business. It's almost like the start a business starter pack. So yeah, it was good.
It's amazing how much having someone take you under their wing in any capacity as a mentor can really shape our learning journey, and where we can go from there. It really accelerates our growth. So in
Absolutely.
terms of that journey into leadership and the early interest in entrepreneurial journeys and building businesses and creating things that improve people's lives or impact people's lives, where did your journey on the tools fit into, or like the construction industry fit into all of that, and how has it shaped the industry that you work in today?
Over the years, I've been in business now for 10 years. And over that journey, I've had different mentors come and go. And I think a lot of people have the wrong idea around what a mentor is and how it works. And you might think you have one for the entire duration of your journey, but at different times I've outgrown a mentor or something like that. And that's been really, really critical for my growth, is making sure that whoever I've got in my life at that time is actually helping me to continue moving forward. And then vice versa, going back the other way, when you're mentoring someone, which there's been people over the years that have asked for different advice and all that sort of thing. And I've been giving that. It's whether or not I can add value to them and keep adding value to them moving forward. So yeah, I think it's an important part of leadership in itself. If you're mentoring or being a mentee, it's sort of making sure that it is fitting that person's period in their life and able to help them move forward.
And that's really powerful you mentioned that, because I think as well, and I know I've always been inclined to be a very helpful person. And what I had to learn pretty quickly as a leader is that sometimes you're not the right fit, and taking responsibility for that dynamic and the impact you want to have on that person is actually recognizing that you should create space, or that you shouldn't be trying to
Mm,
mentor someone because you're not the right fit. And that takes a lot of self-awareness, but also awareness of other people to be able to make those decisions,
correct.
where just because you might have that more experience or authority, that it doesn't actually mean that that's a helpful way to help a person.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree.
And so then going back to how your trade and working in the construction industry now all fits together, what was that journey, and how has it shaped, obviously, the kind of businesses that you're running today?
Yeah, so it comes back to that period when I was at this business consultancy, and one of the papers I was writing at the time was on concrete 3D printing, or on 3D printing in general, and the fact that you can 3D print in over 300 different materials, and one of which was concrete, and at large scale you can use it for 3D printing of houses, and that was really interesting to me at the time. I'd come from my parents, so my dad owns a mechanical business. I've always been around trades. We've had an ongoing extension of my family home for the last 25 years. So it's the never ending extension. It'll be finished one day. I don't know whether we'll still be living in the house, but it'll be finished at some stage. But during that time, I've always been around building and tools and making stuff is sort of where I come from. And when I was looking at this as an idea, I sort of looked around. No one was really doing any concrete 3D printing in Australia. We're going back, 8, 9 years ago, and someone had off the cuff sort of said to me, "Hey, Tom, why don't you do it? Like, you've got your software background, you've got the mechanical background. It seems like it might be a good fit." I looked at it and thought that, I've got the friends in the industry. I can probably make something work, and let's give it a crack. And reached out to some people overseas and tried to bring their machines to Australia and spend some time in Europe with a couple of the manufacturers working with them, and just really focused on trying to commercialize concrete 3D printing in Australia was how I actually entered the construction industry. During that time, obviously, you still need something to do. So I was working on getting my boiler making engineering sort of ticket. And so once I had gotten that to a point, and I had the 3D printing company to a point, I then needed a way to continue to do the 3D printing work because we were struggling to get any sort of investment for it. Being a hardware based company, it's very difficult to raise any sort of money in Australia. And so we sort of sat down and went, we need an alternative idea. And having a qualification as a boilermaker, I was then able to start doing some jobs for that, and started with handrails and eventually worked our way up to small residential sort of structural jobs, and then brought on my first employees. And yeah, we sort of just built the company out of that. And really, we created a structural steel business or fabrication engineering business to fund a concrete 3D printing business that couldn't get investment. So that the whole reason for becoming involved in the traditional side of construction was to fund the new version of construction, and that sort of continues today.
That takes a lot of persistence and grit, and I definitely can imagine the journey that is, knowing that myself and my husband are going through similar stages of our journey, probably been in those earlier years of what your journey was, and just having to find ways to make things happen when you don't have the capital to do the work you want to do. So that's really exciting. So obviously, when it comes to building something that hasn't existed before, things tend to not go to plan. That's part of the journey. So how do you approach those setbacks and mistakes for yourself and your team?
I used to look at these things a little bit different, and I think things have changed over the last sort of as I've started to get more and more staff, and as we've grown. I think one of the things that's improved for me is the ability to not take things to heart so much. I think originally when things would start to go wrong, I'd sort of get annoyed and get angry and all that sort of thing, and that would just not really help the situation. And yeah, after time, you sort of realize that it will be what it will be, and it'll work out. If it's meant to be, it'll work out in the end for yourself. So that's been something that's sort of changed for me a lot, is focusing on just making sure that, control what we can control. The building industry is a very tricky beast. It's very difficult to put these projects together. Like, I joke with my partner a little bit that her and her friends complain about planning weddings and that sort of thing. And realistically, building a building is like planning a wedding every single day, and we just keep doing it on repeat.
Obviously, you have to collaborate with a lot of different stakeholders across all your businesses, the work you're doing. So how do you build relationships that support effective communication?
So when we're dealing with a project, obviously you got the developer, you got the builder, you've got the engineer that you're having to deal with. And because at the moment, for your listeners, we've got the concrete 3D printing business, we've got a concreting arm, like a standard slabs and basements and that sort of thing. We've got a bit of carpentry, and we've got the structural steel engineering type business. So we cover a fair chunk of a build when we go to do it. Now, we need to have a relationship with these people, the engineers and the builders especially, because they're trusting us with a large chunk of this build. Now, there can be different issues that we have throughout a build, but typically it's something to do with the detailing or it'll be a timeline issue or a materials issue or something like that. And it's just making sure that you've got the ability to pick up the phone and call this person to sort of get a solution nuggeted out. I think typically the main things that we're sort of speaking to people about when it comes to sort of building that relationship, it's just about making sure that we're holding up our end of the bargain, I think, is the key. If we're keeping the dialogue open and we're easy to get a hold of and easy to get along with, that goes a long way. If you need a favor, let's say material's been delayed or whoever's finishing it, like if you've got galvanizing or powder coating, there's a delay in that and something that we can't control. So long as we've done everything that we can to sort of help push their project along, that's all anyone cares about. So yeah, working together and just keeping communication open. Over communicating is really the key to making sure you got good relationships in the industry, that's for sure.
And obviously that consistency and reliability piece goes a long way to building trust as well, I imagine, which I picked up in what you were saying. I know the construction
Absolutely.
industry has a reputation for being a bit slow to change. What's the biggest resistance you've come up against and how have you navigated, especially when it's come to your 3D printing?
But to be honest, we're still navigating it. It's the construction industry is a slow-moving beast, and there's a lot of vested interest in keeping it the same. For example, one of the things that we're battling with at the moment is just around the material supply side of things. So we don't use a traditional concrete when we're pouring our walls. We have a bit more of a specialized mix. It's got to go off a fair bit faster. The aggregates that used in it are a bit finer than, say, a traditional concrete blend. The concrete companies are less interested in producing that because it's only a small quantity that's required at the moment, and therefore it's not really worth their time. So that's one of the things that I guess we're battling with at the moment. And the way that you sort of get around that is you have to do a lot of this yourself and sort of show them the benefits of doing that. And that's what we're doing at the moment, is just sort of showing what's possible and hoping that they'll just catch up eventually. And then the other one too is that money talks. If you've got an ability to demonstrate that what you've got is a more cost effective or more time effective way of producing a product, people are really quite willing to listen. That there's definitely not a there's loyalty in the industry, but at the end of the day, the industry is quite loyal to what's cost effective and what's faster so that they can ultimately make more money. It's everyone gets up every day to build stuff, but they build stuff because it puts food on the table for them. So if you've got a better way to do that, they're willing to listen.
It sounds like leading by example, showing the way, but being able to communicate what the return on investment is for the industry that's very interested in that financial implication of anything that we do. Obviously, you're driven by a vision for a fully automated construction option through the 3D concrete printing. How do you use that vision to shape the culture inside your business or the actions and the decisions you make as a business?
So we're focused on bringing automation to as many parts of the construction industry as we can, and that's why we've got the traditional arm of the business. We've got some pretty big plans over the next few years, and hopefully we can execute on them, but it sort of involves bringing different amounts of automation into those sectors of the business. The main reason for that is just the fact that there is a limited supply of worker. There's not a lot of people entering the industry, and so therefore the ones in the industry, so that and what I communicate to my guys is so that we don't, burn you out. Let's assist you with the new tools. Let's tool you up with the latest and greatest technology so that we can output more with less people. And it's not because we're not interested in employing people, it's because we're interested in expanding or amplifying what's possible with the current workforce, because it is not getting bigger, the workforce is getting smaller. So we have to do more with less. And that's really what automation allows you to do. Like you look at any of the other industries, like mining or manufacturing, specifically like car manufacturing is a good example of this. You look at what a production line used to require in terms of human labor, and now what it requires, they're two very different things. And the workload that goes on top of those workers, their quality of life is definitely improved by the fact that automation is being used. Those really hard physical jobs that they were probably used to have to do in terms of lifting and pushing and moving things is now dramatically reduced because of the fact that people have gone and implemented automation on those assembly lines.
I'm sure we could talk about automation and even AI for ages, because while it's not going to entirely take our jobs as tradies, it's definitely going to change the shape of our job. But it's great to see how that kind of future thinking is guiding the decisions you make in your business and creating more efficiency for more return on investment, which does talk the language of businesses, no matter what type of business you're in. We've already had a really interesting chat around so much around leadership and how you show up in your business and how you show up as a leader in the industry. The final question I ask all our guests on the podcast is, what is your advice to tradies about how they can practice everyday leadership regardless of their title or experience?
I think for everyone in the industry, it's just about communicating. If you over communicate, the chances are that everyone knows what's going on. It reduces mistakes, the relationship, and it just all round leads to a better result for everyone. I think communication is really the key. And there's times that I don't necessarily want to communicate things to people, and vice versa. There's times people don't want to communicate things to me, and that's perfectly fine. But typically that works against you. And so just ensuring that everyone's communicating is really the key to leadership.
You've shared some really powerful examples about communication and leadership, but also given us a peek into your business and how you manage those businesses and how you show up in the industry. So thank you so much for your time on the podcast today, Tom. I know I've taken a lot away from this chat, and I'm sure our listeners will as well.
Not a problem at all. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another tradie sharing how they practice leadership in the trades. If you enjoyed this episode, hit like, subscribe to Tradies Who Lead, or follow us on socials for more stories from the people you've heard on the show.